Morning, everyone. Morning and welcome. And if anybody else that has an interest or a stake in the legislation would like to join us on the stage, we'd be glad to have you. If not, I'm here today to announce a bipartisan effort to enact a 3.2% severage, or as I like to call it, drilling tax on the Marcellus shale industry here in the state of Pennsylvania. And just real quickly, I believe this is long overdue. We are the second largest producer, the state of Pennsylvania, of natural gas in the country. And as I understand it, the only state that does not have a severance tax. Although we do have an impact fee, we do not have a severance tax. The only state out of the 17 or 18 states that have Marcellus shale. We all know we're looking at a really big deficit in the budget this year. Now, I'm not up here to say that this is going to fill the entire deficit, but in my estimation, this is the one place that we should look to first to generate new revenue. The four of us, and I'm standing here with Representative DeLisio, Representative Mert, and Representative Harry Reachall from Allegheny County is also co-sponsoring with us, and my understanding is he will be here. We had a similar bill that taxed the Marcellus shale last session. They are similar, although there is one big difference between last session and this session. This session, we are leaving the impact fee in place. We are not touching the impact fee. And on top of the impact fee, we are adding this 3.2% severance tax. So if you look at the impact fee, and that is somewhere under 2%. I think it fluctuates a little bit. It's generated about $200 million a year for the past 3 years. So if you add the impact fee, what percentage it is with the 3.2, it's close to about a 5% tax. I think that is fair. I think that is reasonable. I think when you look at the other states and compare apples to apples with their tax structure in the other states, I think this is in the middle of the road, if not below the middle of the road in the rate of taxation. Where are we putting the revenue? And again, this is what we've come up with. And if you look at the co-sponsorship memo, we are putting our revenue in 4 areas. First, 40% of the revenue is going into basic education. That will come out to approximately $220-some million a year. For the first year that this is in place, each percent generates about $6 million of revenue. So we're estimating in the first year, 15-16, that it would generate about $600 million, the 3.2% tax, on top of the $200 million. We are also putting 35% into our pension funds to help address the pension problem that we have. We are putting 15% into human services. That will come out to approximately $85 million. And if we can go back to 4 years ago, human services took a 10% cut, which was approximately $84 million. And our counties are really, really struggling with providing human services to our citizens and our constituents. So we really wanted to try to put that 10% back, that $84 million, and we're also putting 10% into the environmental programs around the state. So, and if you look at the co-sponsorship memo, at the very end, in our view, and I mean our view, what should a good drilling tax proposal should meet the following criteria: fair and reasonable to the industry. We think it is. Comparable to other states. We believe that's the case. It assists the host community with the economic, social, and environmental impacts of drilling. And again, from talking to legislators where there are drilling, their communities, come on up, Harry, their communities and their counties, they really like the impact fee. So that's why we're leaving it in place. It makes long-term investments in our natural resources and environmental programs. It strengthens the stitching of the Commonwealth safety net in time of need, education, human services. We think that does that. And it makes sure that every citizen in the Commonwealth benefits in some way. And we really believe it does that. So with that, I'm just going to close before I introduce Representative Reachall by saying that this is the proposal that we've come up with. I'm going to speak for myself, but I believe everybody else behind me agrees that we are open to suggestions, open to changes, open to working with the administration and leadership on both sides of the aisle and making changes to our proposal. We are not wedded to this 3.2%. If that needs to be adjusted a little bit, we are not wedded to where we are putting the revenue, although that is where we believe in our state budget, those are the areas that we believe would benefit the most from this additional revenue. So we are very, very much open to working with the administration and with leadership and other members in the House and the Senate to come up with a bill that we can get passed in the General Assembly and signed by the governor. Okay, with that, I'm going to introduce my friend and colleague, also a classmate of mine. We came in together in 1994, Representative Harry Reachall from Allegheny County. Harry?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to just say a few words, and I'm sure that Representative DiGirolamo explained everything, and I'm sorry that I was running late. First of all, around here in the Capitol, it's often constituents ask, what motivates you to write legislation, and most of the time, obviously, you need a problem to solve. Problem to solve, and then is the group behind me and myself, we like to address it with a common sense solution. And I think this legislation does that. We recognize the problem, we have a means to solve the problem, and let's use some common sense to do so. And also was just told to you, we collectively are willing to work with all to let you say what you need to say, give us some direction possibly. But I believe that, as you well know, this was introduced last session, and hopefully it'll get more traction, not only with more of our colleagues, but with you folks if you have any input into this. So hopefully we're successful, and hopefully we can get this done quickly. Thank you.
Also like to recognize that we're joined here by many of the stakeholders from the environmental community, from education, and also from human services have joined us behind us and also out in front of us also. I want to recognize Representative Tom Mert next for...
Thank you, Gene. I'm very proud to stand here today with my colleagues and express my support of this proposal, which will place a fair and equitable tax on the extraction of natural gas in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Our Commonwealth has many great assets, one of which is the great deposit of natural gas in our Marcellus shale. Our Marcellus shale reserves have been a great boon to our economy. Our state government has been patient as the natural gas industry in Pennsylvania has evolved and has grown strong and vibrant. It's now time that Pennsylvania join our neighboring states who already assess a reasonable tax on the extraction of natural gas. It's time for the natural gas industry to pay their fair share. Our bill is designed as a compromise from many other bills being offered. We want to sustain the growth of this industry, not slow it down. We want to be fair and reasonable while helping the local communities who are already being affected by drilling operations. One aspect of our proposal that's unique and especially attractive to me personally is the fact that we earmark the destination of the revenues, which will be generated by this tax. The revenues will not be dumped into Harrisburg's black hole. They'll be devoted to missions such as the environment, education, and human services. As this proposal relates to human services, we call for some of the revenues to be used to fund programs and services that serve our adult population who have developmental disabilities. This population of adult men and women, many of whom are well into their 60s and 70s, are cared for at home by their parents, many of whom are well into their 80s and even into their 90s. and suffer from their own age and health-related challenges. These men and women with intellectual disabilities are amongst the most vulnerable of Pennsylvanians. This mission of caring for them deserves a dedicated funding source, and the legislation we are proposing addresses this need. The governor himself has stated his sincere goal of reducing the waiting list of adults with special needs who are patiently waiting for programs and services. This legislation will provide the critically needed funding to address this objective. Our Commonwealth is facing a very significant deficit of almost $2 billion, depending on whom we speak with. We have a bipartisan proposal right here that has the potential to generate millions of dollars that will support the operating budget of the Commonwealth and support closing the budget deficit. The administration and legislative leadership have the commitment of the legislators who are here today to work towards addressing this crisis. Doing the right thing is seldom easy or popular here in Harrisburg. Every decision that's made is second-guessed by just about everyone. This legislation is clearly the right thing to do, and I urge my colleagues to stand with us and embrace this proposal.
Representative Pam Delicio.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm joined by one of my constituents, Chris Saffa, to my right. She was good enough to bring along today. Thank you, Pam, for co-priming this with my colleagues. The residents of the 194th have been following this discussion for several years. They're well aware that Act 13 of 2012 was a skewed piece of legislation. It favored the industry. It didn't favor the citizens, and we're looking for an opportunity so that this legislation is truly balanced and the greater good of both the industry and the citizens are served equally. And I do believe that is possible. And it's my pleasure to work in a bipartisan manner to move this forward. As you've heard, there is a structural deficit, and with a deficit of that magnitude, it's actually north of $2 billion, and that's billion. It's very important. That kind of analysis takes a while, and the administration is in the process of really looking at those numbers and finding out how that structural deficit can be corrected with sustainable and recurring revenue going forward. But we wanted to start this conversation, and this opportunity, this co-sponsorship memo and this legislation provides us that opportunity. And just want to really echo that part of strategy for any really good piece of legislation and development of good policy requires that type of coordination. And we will be coordinating this among our own colleagues, with the administration, and eventually with the Senate as well. This is a very, very important piece of legislation and to be introduced as quickly as possible and to hopefully have this discussion move along. So with that being said, it's my pleasure to be here to work with all of the stakeholders involved in this, and it is possible to leverage this natural resource. It is important to leverage this natural resource, but it's also important to do it in such a way as to ensure the ongoing safety and health of our citizens, of our land, water, and air. That sounds like an awfully big undertaking and task, but it is imminently doable, and our commitment is to make that happen. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I do have a brief statement to read on behalf of Steve Stroman, who works for Penn Future. Penn Future commends Representative DiGirolamo, Delicio, and Reachel for their efforts to pass a long overdue drilling tax for Pennsylvania. Due to the impact that gas drilling has on our water, land, and air, it is appropriate that this bill would dedicate a portion of the tax revenue to be used to protect and conserve the state's natural resources. We look forward to working with the legislators on both sides of the aisle, as well as the Wolf administration, to finally enact this tax for the benefit of all the citizens of this great Commonwealth. With that, I think we can take some questions, if there are any, from the press. Okay.
Have you gotten any feedback from House leadership on this bill yet?
No, no, we have not. We have not run this by House leadership. I'm not sure on the other side of the aisle if they have either. Other than just last session, a little bit of general discussions about what we would want to do, but I have not directly talked to anybody from leadership on my side of the aisle about the bill.
With the industry going through a down cycle right now, do you think there's an appetite to actually pass legislation, a driller's tax, with the industry going through a bust cycle?
In my opinion, I think there is an appetite to pass legislation. I think there's an appetite in both the House and the Senate. And my guess would be that if we got a bill to the vote on the floor that was similar to what we're going to do, my guess would be that probably there'd be 125 or more votes in the House to pass it. Now, I'm not going to try to guess what's over in the Senate, but I would guess percentage-wise probably the same amount would be. And again, I'm going to go back to leaving the impact fee in place, because from talking to the legislators where the drilling is going on, their communities are really happy with the impact fee and the revenue it's been generating and the way it's working. So that's why we left it like that. But I think there's an appetite right now. I mean, we have a newly elected governor who has said that he's in favor of doing something like this. And, you know, if we could get a bill to his desk, I'm sure he would sign it.
How do you see any, the inevitable linkage of issues when it gets to be June, this starts to get linked with pensions or liquor stores, or how do you avoid that?
Well, I mean, that's what we do up here. I mean, it's my favorite saying is democracy at work. It would be my hope that this would not have to be linked with any other issue. And you mentioned liquor. Would be my hope that it would not be linked with liquor. I think this issue should stand on its own. And again, we go back to the deficit that we have and generating revenue, which we're going to have to do. And there's some tough decisions that are going to be made. And in my mind, I mean, we talk about low-hanging fruit, and I don't mean to say that this is an easy thing to get done, but in my mind, this is $500 or $600 million of revenue that can be generated in the first full year of implementation. So I hope this issue stands on its own, and I hope it's not linked with any other issue.
In the previous session, I know Stuart Greenleaf introduced a bill to conduct like a $3 million comprehensive health review. Would that be included with this type of package?
What kind of review?
Health review with natural gas drilling in Pennsylvania.
Mike, I don't think that's in there, is it? No, we do not have that. I mean, while that might be a good idea, it's not in our bill.
I think that the current law has in it a provision that says if you enact a severance tax, it ends the local impact fee. How does your legislation deal with that?
It strikes that individual line,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
the impact fee stays.
Anybody else have any questions? Anybody have anything to add? Oh, yeah.
Talking to Steve Miskin earlier today, he said a severance tax isn't even on the table. Sounds like you feel differently.
Well, I mean, as far as it not on the table, I mean, we certainly, I think the next step we have to wait for is the governor's budget address, which is coming in March. I mean, I think this needs to be part as we get into the budget season where we're going to debate and try to get this. I mean, I would like to get it done as quickly as possible. But this, my guess would be that this is something that's going to be, that we're going to hopefully vote on as part of, as we get closer to the budget in May or June. I very much like to see what the governor has to say about this in his budget proposal. I mean, I know he said in the past that he's in favor of doing something like this. We have not talked to anybody in administration about our proposal yet. I am sure that now we got it out there that they're going to be looking at it. And again, we are very open to working with the administration and the other interested parties and trying to come up with a final bill.
A couple of moments ago, you said that you hope that this isn't tied to liquor privatization. Is that going to be your same views on the pension reform? You hope that this bill isn't held to?
Well, I mean, that's certainly another issue that, they could try to link this with. I mean, and again, I'm just going to, on my own, I hope this is not linked with any other issue, whether it's pension or liquor or whatever the issue. I mean, I think this is an issue that's important enough that it can stand on its own. And I've got a casino in my district, Parks Casino, and it's the highest generating revenue casino in the state. And when I look at the casino, the host municipality gets 2% of the gross terminal revenue. The host county, which is Bucks County, gets 2%. So of the total revenue that's generated, the host community and the host county gets 4%. The other 96% of the revenue goes up to Harrisburg and is spread around the whole state in the form of property tax relief. I mean, so I look at this issue of Marcellus sale as something that's similar, that there should be revenue that's generated that everybody in the whole Commonwealth can benefit from. And I think that's what we do in our bill when you look at education, human services, the environment, and helping our pension problem out. Any other questions? All right, let's get this on. Okay, let's go to work.